it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a birthday card using one of the owls from this MFT's I'm Owl Yours stamp sets. I'll also be adding two little gifts from the Beast Friends and the party hat and the little leaves from Fawn's Hang In There. I will also be using some pattern paper from the Chamel Little by Little 6x6 paper pad. So let's go ahead and get started. I decided to do some watercoloring with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens today. So to begin, I'm using 42 Turquoise Green to add some shading towards the bottom of the owl's body, and then I'm just going to outline that as well. And then I will take number 36 Light Blue and just bring that color up a bit and kind of blend it out. So it adds a little bit of a different color in there. The Turquoise Green has a little more green in it, and this one is more of a true aqua. So once I've laid that down, I'm going to grab my number 4 round brush. This is from the Silver Black Velvet brush line. And I'm going to blend all of that out with some clean clear water. And I'm working from the dark edges towards the inside. I want to keep the area of his face a little bit lighter and keep that highlighted. So I'm just bringing that color in, and if it gets a little bit too dark, then I just dip into some more clean water so that I don't bring too much of that pigment into the center. And I slopped just a little bit of color into that eye, and I want to keep that light so I can add a different color later. So I'm just going to take some clean water and just clean that up a bit. I wanted to mention that I did stamp these images with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto some Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock, and then I clear heat embossed that so that it would just help me stay in the lines a little bit better. But some of these little areas are super small, and it's just easy to carry the pigment inside. So I just clean that up with some more clean water as quickly as I can so that it doesn't have time to settle in and stain the paper. I lost some of that turquoise color, so I'm just adding a bit more pigment. I'm also going to add some of the light blue and just blend that out once again so that I have a stronger contrast towards the bottom of his body. And I am just trying to be extra careful working around those little feather shapes on his body so that I don't carry the pigment back into those little areas. And that's the great thing about these silver black velvet brushes. They have super fine tips that make them easy to do detail work like this. So now I'm going to leave that portion of my owl to dry, and I'm going to move on to my leaves. And for my leaves, I'm starting with number 47 May Green, and then I'm adding a little bit of 45 Pale Green, and then accenting with 44 Deep Green. Now, you probably do not need to use 3 colors for these tiny little leaves. Even one color would probably be sufficient. I just am so used to coloring with Copic markers that sometimes I forget that I don't need to add 3 shades into this tiny little bit of space, because you can do your shading with your water, so the areas that you have more water in are going to naturally be lighter, and the areas where you add less water are going to be darker. But anyway, these are the 3 shades that I did add for my leaves, and I'm happy with how they turned out, so it was fine. After that, I decided to just stick to one color for the rest of the images, and so you can see how that's going to turn out here. For my first gift, the larger gift, I'm starting with number 22 Carmine Red, and I'm also going to add a little bit to one of the stripes of my party hat. And then I'm going to blend that out with just a little bit of water. And that little bit of a raised line from the embossing is really going to help me to stay in the lines when I'm coloring small things like this little party hat that has several colors close together. For the bow on my larger gift, I'm using number 30 Blue, and I'm going to use that for the bottom stripe on the party hat as well. And just blend that out with a touch of water. And I'm using my number 2 round paintbrush now. I actually only used the number 4 for the body of the owl and then switched to the number 2 when I started the leaves, and I continued to use that for the rest of these images since they're very small. I used the number 50 yellow for the smaller gift and the next stripe on my party hat. And then I'm going to bring in the number 82 purple for the bow on that. And also adding another stripe to my party hat. And then always blending out with water immediately because you want to work with that pigment before it soaks into the paper too much. For the last little stripe on my party hat, I decided to go back to my number 42 turquoise green and just tie that color from the owl's body back into the other images. For the owl's wings and the little feathers on her body, I'm using number 21 Light Carmine. And I probably should have waited to color in these little feathers until after I had blended out the wings, because by the time I got around to them, as you'll see, it was a little bit more difficult to manipulate that color on the paper, but I was able to do it. So I'm just blending that out with some water, and then here you can see like I'm having a little bit of trouble blending that out, but I was able to get it to move around. But next time I would probably just do one small area at a time, so just the wings and blend, and then just the feathers and blend, so that the pigment is still fresh on the page. For her beak, I'm using number 50 yellow, and I'm not going to even blend that out with any water since it's such a small area. And then I'm going to go back and finish her eyes with that 21 Light Carmine, and I'm just adding my shading down towards the bottom so it almost looks like a little bit of blush. And then I'm just going to blend that out and leave the highlight towards the top center. So once my images are completely dry, I'm going to take a white Sakura Jelly Roll pen and I'm going to add just a few little details here and there. In one of the prints of the pattern paper that I'm using, the leaves have little white polka dots on them, and I thought that was a cool detail, and I wanted to carry that over onto my images. So I'm just very carefully adding in a few details here and there. I wasn't sure how far I was going to go with this, so I just took my time and went slow. I added a few polka dots to the yellow gift, and then I decided to add them to the blue bow on the larger gift. I added a few little accents to my owl's wings, just a couple little dots and lines there. And then I decided to add a few little accents on the feathers on her body as well. Once you get started with these little details, it can be kind of hard to stop. And then I'm just adding a few more white polka dots to this last leaf on this third cluster that I had left off earlier. I've die cut a circle out of some more Bristol Smooth Surface with the Lawn Fawn Stitched Circle Stackables, and I'm just going to add a little bit of color with the 45 Pale Green and the 36 Light Blue, and this is going to kind of represent some leaves and sky, as if my owl is sitting up in a tree in my little scene here. Although once I get my images all placed over top, you don't see very much of it in the final card, but a little bit shows through. So I'll just blend that out with some water and set that aside to dry. I stamped out my sentiment on another piece of Bristol and die cut that with one of the banners that comes with the Neat and Tangled scallop dies. And now I'm just taking the 21 Light Carmine, and I want it to be a really light wash, so I added some water to my cardstock first and then blended out that color using an acrylic block to make sure that it stays nice and light. Now that our focal panel is dry, we can begin to build our scene. So I'm going to add my little owl to the right side, and then I'm going to pop up this little red gift under her wing. I've added foam tape to the back of all of my little die cuts today just to add a lot of dimension. I'm going to add the smaller gift right on top of the larger one, just kind of stack them up by tucking it behind the blue bow. And I'll add my party hat to the top of the owl's head, kind of at an angle just to make it a little bit more quirky and fun. The 3 little leaf clusters I'm going to tuck here and there so it gives that illusion that she's possibly up in a tree. So I've added one to the left of her and then one between her and the gifts, kind of overlapping the gift a little bit. And then I'm going to take the third one and just tuck it behind the 2 gifts where they meet. And then I will just set that aside. I'm using a light yellow card base that is scored and folded to a standard portrait style card. So it is 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. And then I'm going to add this owl pattern to the whole front of my card base with some Tombow Mono multi-glue. And I'll just smooth that into place. I'm going to layer this black and white polka dot print right over top of that, just for some contrast. And I die cut both of those using the Lawn Fawn large stitched rectangle stackables dies. I've also die cut a yellow banner using the Lawn Fawn stitch party banner die for the bottom edge and the Lawn Fawn rectangle stackable for the top edge, just to keep that stitching consistent across the card. And I'm going to layer that right down the center and just smooth that into place. I'm going to take my focal panel and add some Tombow Mono to the back of that and layer it over a Lawn Fawn fancy scalloped circle die. And just make sure that I have that good and centered. And there is both that fancy scalloped circle and the stitched circle stackables from Lawn Fawn that I used. I'm going to flip that over and add some Scotch 3M foam tape to the back of that. Just get that covered so that it's well supported. And then I can just peel off the backer sheets. And I'm going to pop that up in the center of my card, right over that yellow banner. I'm going to trim down a piece of foam tape so that it fits across the sentiment banner that I've die cut. And I'll just peel off the backer sheet for that. And just figure out where I wanted to place that on the card. I decided to move it down between the striped pattern on the banner. I thought it looked better there. For the inside of my card, I'm going to be using my Misty tool and stamping in some Lawn Fawn sunflower ink. I'm going to first stamp my sentiment, and I wanted to be able to stamp that twice since it is a lighter shade of ink. And then I can just clean that off and switch that sentiment out for this little owl. And I wanted this owl to look like he's kind of standing on the sentiment. That's why I didn't stamp them both at the same time, because the edge around the images and the sentiment would have made them be too far apart. So I'm just going to stamp him separately, and I will ink him up twice just so that the ink shade is consistent with the sentiment. And that turned out perfect. I don't know how we ever survived without the Misty tool in our craft rooms. I think I wasted a lot of cardstock. But here is a look at our finished card. The inside says, "I hope your birthday is a hoot." And I think somebody's really going to get a kick out of this fun and festively colored card. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And here's a couple extra videos you may also be interested in. You can also click on my photo to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you guys so much for all your support, for the wonderful comments. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.